The hangar of the station gleamed with polished metal and a faint hum of electromagnetic activity as the humans disembarked from their shuttle. Towering alien structures surrounded them, their curves and sharp edges a stark contrast to the utilitarian design of Earth's vessels. Delegations from dozens of species milled about the sprawling entrance, their colorful garments and vocal exchanges creating a cacophony of languages and gestures. Amid the chaos, the humans stood out, not by appearance, but by their demeanor. Ambassador Arnis Brady led the group, his confident steps reflecting the calm authority expected of Earth's diplomatic front. He was flanked by Captain Mark Northcote, a seasoned space marine whose sharp eyes scanned the surroundings as if memorizing every potential threat. Behind them, Communications Officer Lieutenant Cavan Boucher adjusted his wrist-mounted interface, while Lieutenant Amelia Hartley, the team's engineer, carried a compact toolkit slung over her shoulder. Rounding out the group was Sergeant Tygo Rapace, a weapons specialist with an almost predatory gait, his posture casual yet intentional. The humans' wariness was no accident. Before the delegation's arrival, scattered intelligence reports from exploratory missions near the corporation's border systems, identified as the Orvalice conglomerate, hinted at dubious practices. Whispers of disappeared freighters and suspiciously timed resource disputes had been quietly noted by United Earth's United Defense Command, leaving little doubt that the hosts might have more than trade agreements in mind. "Quite the spectacle," Brady murmured, his voice low but carrying enough weight for the team to hear. "They're trying too hard," Northcote replied, his tone gruff. His gaze flicked toward a group of reptilian aliens adorned in ceremonial armor. Their movements were grandiose, and their voices boomed as they exchanged greetings with a delegation of pale, translucent beings. "Overcompensation usually means they're hiding something." Hartley smirked, but stayed silent, her attention fixed on the handheld device as she scanned for anomalies in the station's energy patterns. The humans were the only delegation moving with deliberate restraint, their silence contrasting with the animated exchanges of the other groups. While many delegations openly admired the opulence of the station, humans remained a puzzle, watching, calculating, and speaking only when necessary. The station's main concourse was a masterpiece of alien engineering, its ceiling arching high above in a crystalline dome that refracted the light of a nearby star. Holographic displays projected rotating models of advanced ships and weaponry, each accompanied by data streams in various alien languages. The centerpiece of the hall was a towering statue of the hosting corporation's insignia, an interlocking spiral of gold and obsidian. It loomed like a sentinel, a silent reminder of who held power here. The displays of advanced weaponry and technology bore the same polished veneer, but the way representatives of more advanced species spoke in hushed tones near humans and other lesser delegates carried a clear message. This was no place for equals. A representative of the corporation, a tall insectoid with glittering chitinous plates, approached the human delegation. "Ambassador Brady," it greeted, its voice a series of modulated clicks translated by the station's universal comms system. "It is an honor to welcome representatives of Earth to this historic gathering. We hope you will find our technologies enlightening." Brady nodded with a measured smile. "We're eager to see what you have to offer. The opportunity to learn is invaluable." The insectoid's mandibles twitched, perhaps in amusement. "Of course. Your species has much potential to grow." It gestured toward a display showcasing a sleek black sphere levitating within a containment field. "This, for example, is one of our latest advancements in defense technology. Perhaps your team would care to test it." The team exchanged glances, their silent communication clear. Northcote stepped closer to Brady and spoke in a low tone. "This smells like bait, which is why we're going to bite," Brady replied under his breath, his tone calm. "We need to understand their game." Hartley and Rapace approached the display first, examining the floating sphere. A hologram of its specs rotated beside it, describing it as a universal threat detection and neutralization system. Hartley's fingers brushed the interface, her expression calm but focused, as she worked through the alien interface with a precision that contrasted with its overly convoluted design. While the system hummed and synchronized, she had already slipped countermeasures into place, a seamless execution only possible with the depth of her training. "Ready?" she asked over her shoulder. "Let's see what it can do," Brady replied evenly. The sphere began to hum, emitting a faint glow as it synchronized with the human's devices. For a moment, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then Hartley's screen flickered, a cascade of data streaming across it too quickly to be random. Her expression didn't change, but her hand subtly tapped a sequence on her wrist interface. The data stream ceased abruptly, the glow of the sphere dimming. "Interesting system," Hartley remarked aloud, her tone neutral. "Efficient, but it's running hot. Seems like it struggles with real-time integration." The insectoid tilted its head, a ripple of bioluminescence passing through its body. "A keen observation. We will note that for future iterations." It didn't seem to notice the human's faintly knowing expressions as it gestured them toward another display. As they moved on, Northcote leaned closer to Hartley. "What happened?" "It tried to dig into our systems," she murmured, her voice sharp with controlled urgency. "They weren't just probing. They were scanning for vulnerabilities. I rerouted their protocols to send back junk data before shutting it down completely." Rapace's jaw clenched, and his fingers flexed as if itching to reach for a weapon. "Think they know we caught them?" "No," Hartley replied. "Their system didn't even register the block. They probably think it worked." Brady's voice interrupted their quiet exchange. "Keep it that way," he instructed. "We can't afford to tip our hand." The team continued through the exhibition, their movements slow yet synchronized. Other delegations paid them little attention, too absorbed in the marvels on display or the corporation's promises of unparalleled progress. A group of amphibious creatures chattered excitedly as they tested a plasma rifle, while a towering crystalline alien loudly praised the corporation's goodwill. Fools," Rapace muttered. "They're eating it up." "Let them," Northcote said coldly. "The more noise they make, the easier it is for us to work." As they neared the next display, a member of another delegation, a squat, fur-covered alien with sharp tusks, paused to address them. "Humans," it said, its tone dripping with condescension. "I didn't expect to see your kind here. You must find all this overwhelming." Brady's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're managing." The alien chuckled, its tusks gleaming. "The corporation is truly remarkable, don't you agree? Their generosity in sharing such advancements with species like yours is unprecedented." "We're grateful for the opportunity," Brady replied evenly, his voice betraying no emotion. As the alien waddled away, Rapace muttered, "Generosity, my ass." Hartley's device beeped softly, and she glanced at it with a faint frown. "We need to regroup," she said. "There's more activity on their systems than there should be." Brady's nod was barely perceptible, but his voice carried authority. "Cavan, Tygo, with me. Amelia, Mark, start mapping their security patterns. Assume everything is monitored. Move like ghosts." His gaze swept over the team, a silent command passing between them. Northcote and Hartley exchanged a brief look of understanding before veering off toward a display of propulsion systems. Brady and the others continued toward a section showcasing cloaking devices, their demeanor unchanged, but their focus razor-sharp. As the team split up, the faint hum of the station's systems seemed to grow louder. The humans moved like shadows among the chaos, their actions coordinated and calm. Around them, the alien delegations remained blissfully unaware of the cracks beginning to form beneath the surface of the corporation's polished facade. The hum of the station's systems faded into the background as the human delegation reconvened in a secluded alcove near the exhibition's quieter sections. The polished metal walls reflected faint glimmers of light from the displays, giving the space an air of sterile isolation. Ambassador Brady's calm exterior belied the tension simmering beneath the surface as his team gathered around him in a tight semicircle. Lieutenant Hartley was the last to arrive, her face calm, betraying none of the inner turmoil she carried. "We need to send a report to command," Brady began, his voice low but firm. "What we've uncovered so far is enough to warrant immediate attention." "Agreed," Captain Northcote said, his arms crossed over his chest. "But we can't afford to make it obvious. If they realize we've spotted their game, this could escalate fast." Lieutenant Boucher was already at work, inputting commands quickly over the interface on his forearm. A soft glow illuminated his face as he coded an encrypted message to the United Earth Defense, UED command. "I'll keep it short and vague," Boucher said without looking up. "If they're monitoring outgoing transmissions, we don't want to raise any flags." "Good," Brady replied, his tone measured. "Keep it to the essentials. No speculation, just facts." Boucher nodded, his voice steady as he muttered under his breath, finalizing the message. "Attempted system intrusion detected during tech demonstration. Potential espionage. Investigating further. Awaiting directives." With a swipe, the encrypted transmission was sent, disappearing into the station's comm relay network. The team waited in silence, the weight of the moment heavy in the still air. Minutes ticked by before a soft chime signaled an incoming response. Boucher's interface lit up, displaying a message marked with UED credentials. He opened it, his brow furrowing almost immediately. "That was fast," Rapace muttered, his tone skeptical. "Too fast. Let's see what they said," Brady instructed. Boucher read the message aloud, his voice neutral but tinged with an edge of unease. "Acknowledged. Maintain current position and proceed with caution. Await further instructions." The words hung in the air, and for a moment no one spoke. Something about the phrasing felt off, though it wasn't immediately obvious. Northcote leaned in, his sharp eyes scanning the text. "That doesn't sound right. Maintain current position? Command wouldn't suggest that in a situation like this. They'd push for more intel or at least suggest fallback protocols." "Exactly," Boucher said, his voice tightening. "And look at the header encryption. There's a minor mismatch. It's subtle, but it's there." Hartley stepped closer, her analytical gaze fixed on the display. Could it be a relay issue? Some sort of corruption in transit? Boucher shook his head. "No, the timestamp and routing look clean. Whoever sent this wants us to think it's command." Brady's expression darkened as he processed the implications. "We're isolated," he said quietly, the weight of the statement settling over the group like a heavy shroud. "Whoever intercepted that message wants us to stay put, and in the dark." Rapace's fists clenched at his sides, his voice a low growl. "So what's the play? We wait for them to come at us, or we hit back first?" "We act," Brady declared, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "We're not their prey. We control the field, and we do it on our terms. If we're going to figure out what's happening here, we need to dig deeper, and do it without drawing attention. Mapping security patterns is a start," Northcote said. "We need to know their blind spots if we're going to move without being seen." Hartley nodded, already pulling up a schematic of the station on her device. "I've been running passive scans since we got here. Their internal security grid is complex, but it's not impenetrable. If we use the tech they're showcasing against them, we might find a way into their restricted areas." "Cavan," Brady said, turning to Boucher, "can you keep monitoring their comm channels? Look for anything that might give us an edge. Routing schedules, patrol rotations, anything." "On it," Boucher replied, as he began tapping into the station's encrypted networks. "Mark, Tygo," Brady continued, his eyes hardening. "Scout every corridor, every hatch. Find us ways in, and more importantly, ways out. We need contingency plans for every possible scenario. If something goes wrong, I want options." Northcote's nod was curt, his expression grim. "We'll keep it tight. No unnecessary risks." Rapace smirked faintly, the glint of determination in his eyes. "Risk is my specialty." As the team dispersed to their tasks, Brady remained behind, his gaze lingering on the bustling exhibition floor. Alien delegates continued to marvel at the Orvalis conglomerate's technological wonders, oblivious to the undercurrents of deceit swirling beneath the surface. A shadow crossed the ambassador's face. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure was not an option. About 1 hour later, the team stood in the dimly lit auxiliary corridor, the distant hiss of pressurized air breaking the silence. Hartley deactivated her holographic map, tucking the device into her toolkit as the weight of the moment settled over them. Northcote adjusted the strap of his weapon harness, his sharp eyes darting between the group as he spoke in a low, measured tone. "Amelia Cavan, you're with me," Northcote said, his voice commanding. "Tygo, you stay here with the ambassador. If anything goes sideways, you'll need to keep him alive." "Understood," Rapace replied, his usual smirk replaced by a grim resolve. He shifted his stance, subtly adjusting the position of his sidearm. "I'll keep the boss breathing." Brady gave Northcote a brief nod, his expression calm but guarded. "Make it clean. We can't afford to draw attention." "Understood," Northcote replied. "We'll move like ghosts." Without another word, the infiltration team slipped away, activating the sleek camouflage systems they had adapted from the exhibition. Their outlines shimmered faintly before blending into the sterile corridor as they moved silently and perfectly synchronized. The trio navigated through sparsely used maintenance corridors, the polished walls casting faint reflections of their movements. Hartley led the way, her wrist device projecting a faint beam of light as she scanned for hidden security measures. They reached the maintenance hatch Hartley had identified earlier. She knelt before it, her toolkit already open as her fingers worked with mechanical precision. "The access panel's circuitry is old," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's using a redundant encryption protocol. Shouldn't take long to bypass." "Make it quick," Northcote said, his tone clipped. He and Boucher kept their backs to the wall, eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of movement. Hartley's device emitted a soft chime, and the hatch slid open with a quiet hiss. "We're in," she whispered, stepping aside to let the others enter first. Inside, the passage was narrow and dimly lit, the air carrying a faint metallic tang. Pipes and conduits lined the walls, their surfaces damp with condensation. Hartley's map flickered to life on her wrist device, guiding them deeper into the station's restricted lower levels. As they moved, Boucher tapped into the station's internal comms, his interface glowing faintly as he scanned for activity. "Patrols are light down here," he murmured. "But there's increased chatter near the server hub. They're definitely on edge." "Stay sharp," Northcote said, his voice a low growl. "If they catch us, we're done." The trio advanced in silence. Hartley paused at intervals to disable motion sensors and reroute power from nearby security nodes, her hands steady despite the growing tension. They reached a junction where the narrow corridor widened into a larger access chamber. Hartley halted abruptly, her hand shooting up in a silent signal for the others to stop. She pointed to a droid stationed near the far wall, its sleek design and glowing optics marking it as a security unit. "Standard patrol model," Boucher whispered. "Probably tied into their main grid." "We can't leave it operational," Northcote said. "Suggestions?" Hartley studied the droid for a moment before nodding. "I can reprogram it, but I'll need a few minutes." "Minutes we might not have," Northcote replied, his eyes narrowing. He glanced at Boucher. "Cover her. I'll keep watch." Boucher nodded, positioning himself near Hartley as she approached the droid carefully. She opened a compartment on its side, her toolkit producing a slim interface cable that she connected to its core. "Keep it steady," Hartley muttered, working swiftly on her device as she bypassed the droid's security protocols. "Its failsafe will trigger if I move too fast." Northcote crouched at the chamber's entrance, his weapon drawn and his gaze fixed on the corridor. Every creak of metal and hum of machinery sent a flicker of tension through his muscles. "Almost there," Hartley whispered, her voice tight with concentration. The droid emitted a faint whir, its optics flickering as Hartley's commands took hold. A moment later, it stood motionless, its posture no longer threatening. "Got it," she said, exhaling softly. "It's ours now." "What can it do?" Northcote asked, stepping back toward the group. Hartley tapped a command into her interface, and the droid's optics glowed faintly. It's linked to the local network. I can use it to disable cameras and unlock doors in this sector. It'll make our next moves a lot easier. Good, Northcote said. Then let's keep moving. The droid followed them silently as they continued toward the server hub. Its presence was a constant reminder of the stakes. Its cold mechanical frame a tool that could just as easily become a liability if something went wrong. They reached the entrance to the server hub, a reinforced door flanked by security panels. Hartley knelt before one of the panels, her toolkit once again in hand. "This might take a bit longer," she said. "The encryption here is more advanced." "Work fast," Northcote said, his tone low but firm. He glanced at Boucher. "Anything on comms?" "Nothing yet," Boucher replied, his focus on his interface. "But if they're monitoring this area as closely as I think they are, it's only a matter of time before they notice something." Hartley's fingers moved quickly, years of practice evident in her fluid motions. Her brow furrowed in concentration as the droid stood nearby, its optics scanning the corridor for threats. After a tense minute, the door slid open with a muted hiss. Inside, the server hub was a stark contrast to the utilitarian corridors they had traversed. Rows of glowing data cores stretched across the room, their surfaces pulsating with streams of encrypted information. The air was colder here, the hum of machinery louder. Boucher stood to her left, scanning comm channels for any signs of increased activity, while Northcote kept a vigilant watch near the doorway, his hand resting on his sidearm. The droid stood beside him, its optics glowing faintly as it monitored the corridor for threats. Hartley immediately set to work, her device interfacing with one of the data cores. "There's a lot here," she said, her voice tight. "They've been intercepting communications from every delegation. Personal, political, military, everything." Boucher moved to another terminal and scanned the data streams. "This isn't just espionage, it's blackmail. They've got leverage on everyone." "Get what you can," Northcote instructed. "We don't have time to be thorough." Hartley nodded, diving deeper into the labyrinth of encrypted files. Moments later, a folder marked Priority. Orvalis directives caught her attention. She tapped it, and a series of recordings began to play silently on her device, accompanied by text transcripts. Her face hardened as the implications became clear. "Mark," she called softly, turning the screen toward Northcote. "You need to see this." Northcote stepped closer, his sharp eyes scanning the recordings. The first was a holographic feed of the Orvalis CEO in a private meeting with high-ranking officials from various species. The CEO, a towering insectoid figure with bioluminescent patches flickering faintly across his angular exoskeleton, leaned forward with a predatory grace. The conversation was chilling in its bluntness. "This fair is a tool," the CEO said, his tone clinical. "The species we've invited here are resources, not equals. Their technological advancement will serve our interests, either as allies in conflict or as pawns in larger games. Subtle manipulation yields results far more sustainable than outright conquest." Another recording followed, showing a heated discussion in which Orvalis executives debated how to exploit specific weaknesses in the delegations present. 1. A wiry, crystalline alien with shifting hues rippling across its surface suggested withholding vital resources to create dependence. Another, a heavy-set quadrupedal being with a thick ridged skull and glowing fissures running along its body, proposed blackmailing influential leaders with fabricated scandals. Their casual tones and dismissive gestures made the cruelty of their words even more jarring. Hartley's grip on her device tightened. They're using this fair to turn every species here into tools for their power plays. It's not just espionage, it's systematic domination. Boucher's face darkened as he scrolled through intercepted communications. "They've already started implementing some of these plans. Look, this one's targeting a delegation from the Valtari. They're planting evidence to frame them as hostile aggressors." Northcote's expression hardened, his voice low, edged with urgency. "We're blowing the lid off this. Amelia, can you compile all of this into a single file?" Already working on it, Hartley replied. I'll compress the recordings and attach detailed annotations. Once we send this out, every delegation here will know exactly what Orvalis has been doing. Before Northcote could respond, Hartley's device emitted a sharp beep. We've got company, she said. A patrol's heading this way. Northcote's shoulders stiffened, tension radiating through his posture. Shut it down and move. Hartley tapped a final command into her device, the droid responding instantly as it moved to disable the nearby cameras. Done, she said, pulling back from the data core. The team slipped out of the server hub, just as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. The droid followed, its optics glowing faintly as it continued to suppress the security systems in their path. As they disappeared into the shadows of the maintenance corridors, Northcote allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They had what they needed, at least for now. But the game was far from over, and the Orvalis conglomerate would not remain unaware for long. Meanwhile, on the station's main exhibition floor, the Orvalis CEO, Vilos Kryn, stepped onto the stage, his insectoid form catching the light of the massive holographic displays. Delegates from dozens of species turned their attention to the raised platform as the presentation began. His tone was smooth, practiced, and reassuring. At Orvalis, we lead the galaxy toward unity through innovation, the CEO declared, his mandibles clicking in rhythm with the translator's soothing voice. This gathering is a testament to what we can achieve together, a future where technological barriers no longer divide us. Scattered applause echoed through the hall, though some delegates exchanged skeptical glances. In one corner, Brady stood with Rapace, their faces composed as they watched the unfolding spectacle. Brady's eyes were scanning the room for reactions, while Rapace's posture remained casual, his hand resting near his holstered weapon. This is just a smokescreen, Rapace murmured. They're buttering everyone up while they pull the strings. Which is why we need to give them something they can't ignore, Brady replied. The others need to see the truth with their own eyes. As the Orvalis CEO's voice reverberated across the exhibition floor, carrying promises of unity and progress, the true battle for control unfolded in the shadows. Deep within the station's labyrinthine maintenance corridors, the human team moved with resolve. Their task was no longer just survival. It was exposing the cracks beneath Orvalis's polished facade. The droid stood silently beside Hartley as she worked, its stillness mirroring the tension in the air. The team had regrouped in a dimly lit maintenance corridor, just out of sight of the server hub. Hartley crouched beside the droid, her wrist device synced to its interface. The glow from her screen cast sharp shadows on the walls as she worked. Now we just need to make sure it gets out, Boucher said, glancing at the droid. Can it access the station's comm relays from here? Hartley nodded, while working on her device. It's linked to the local network. I can override its protocols and broadcast the file to every display on the station. Do it, Northcote said, his voice low and firm. We'll cover you, but keep it quick. We're not out of this yet. The droid's optics pulsed faintly as Hartley executed the final command. Its mechanical frame remained eerily still, but inside its circuits, an override protocol activated, linking it fully to the station's comm relays. Streams of encrypted data from Hartley's device flowed seamlessly through the droid's interface. The human team stood in tense silence, each member hyper-aware that their next move would ignite a firestorm. It's ready, Hartley said, her voice quiet but firm. Once I push this, there's no going back. Northcote nodded, his gaze hard as steel. Do it. They need to see everything. Hartley tapped a final command. The file compressed and encrypted for distribution, launched into the station's central broadcast systems. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then the droid's optics flared bright, signaling the transfer's completion. On the station's main exhibition floor, the enormous holographic displays shimmered, their glossy advertisements for Orvalis technology suddenly replaced with stark black screens. The murmur of the crowd quieted as the visuals stuttered before resolving into the face of Vilos Kryn, the Orvalis CEO, mid-conversation. His bioluminescent patches glowed faintly, and his tone, captured in the recording, was dripping with disdain. "These species are pawns," Crin's voice echoed throughout the chamber, amplified by the station's speakers. "They exist to serve our interests, whether they know it or not." A stunned silence fell over the gathered delegates. Eyes widened, mandibles clicked, and tendrils quivered as the crowd collectively held its breath. The recording continued, showing the secret meeting where the CEO and his executives discussed tactics to manipulate and control the various species represented in the room. On stage, Crin froze mid-sentence, his practiced confidence replaced by visible confusion. The holograms around him continued to play the incriminating footage, one clip bleeding into the next. Delegates across the room began to react, murmurs turning to angry outbursts as the scope of the betrayal became clear. "What is this?" a towering crystalline alien shouted, its hues shifting to an angry red. "Is this a joke?" demanded a reptilian delegate, its claws digging into the table in front of it. The recordings grew worse. Individual delegates flinched as their private communications appeared on nearby displays, showing intercepted messages and compromising footage. The crowd erupted into chaos as the scale of the corporation's surveillance became evident. Brady stood near the edge of the crowd with Rapace, both men watching the unfolding scene. Brady's expression was unreadable. Rapace, in contrast, grinned faintly, his posture casual, his hands resting at his sides with a tension that hinted at readiness for whatever came next. "Well," Rapace said, his voice low, "that hit like a freight train." Brady glanced at him. "It's not over yet." Back on stage, Crin's confusion hardened into fury. He leaned toward a subordinate, his voice low and sharp, but it was obvious the damage had been done. Delegates began to converge near the stage, shouting accusations and demands for explanations. In the server hub, Hartley and Boucher monitored the reactions through a nearby display, the tension in the room visible even through the grainy feed. Northcote stood near the exit, his posture tense as he scanned for approaching threats. "That'll get their attention," Boucher muttered, his tone a mix of satisfaction and unease. Hartley's hand hovered over her device, the files fully embedded in their systems. Even if they try to shut it down, it'll take hours to purge completely. Northcote nodded, his expression grim. "Good. We're moving. This place won't stay quiet for long." On the exhibition floor, Crin raised his voice, his mandibles clicking audibly as he tried to regain control. "This is a fabrication," he declared, his tone sharp and commanding. "An attack on Orvalis by those who seek to undermine our progress. I assure you." The crowd's reaction cut him off. Angry shouts rose, their voices growing louder with each passing moment. Delegates turned on one another, old rivalries bubbling to the surface as accusations flew. A smaller delegation from a fringe system demanded answers about why their private negotiations had been exposed, while others screamed for the CEO's resignation. Crin's gaze snapped to a subordinate, his bioluminescent patches pulsing rapidly. "End this," he hissed. "Now!" The subordinate nodded, retreating into the shadows to relay the order. Moments later, the station's lights dimmed and a shrill alarm echoed through the halls. Delegates froze mid-argument, their heads snapping toward the sound. The air grew thick with tension, the kind that precedes violence. The room froze for a heartbeat as the first droids stepped forward, their mechanical limbs moving with predatory efficiency. Then, chaos erupted. Delegates scattered in every direction, some screaming, others shoving past one another in desperate attempts to flee. The air filled with the sharp whir of servos and the ominous hum of charged weapons. A crystalline alien stumbled as a droid lunged toward it, metallic hands grabbing its arm with unrelenting force. Another delegate, a reptilian creature, hissed in defiance, only to be struck down by a droid's concussive blast, its body crumpling against the polished floor. The cold precision of the machines left no room for mercy. From the edges of the room, Brady and Rapace watched the pandemonium unfold. Rapace's jaw clenched as he saw a small delegation being cornered near the exit, their panic evident. "This isn't just a sweep," he muttered, his voice low. "They're hunting." "We need to regroup," Brady said, his tone firm despite the chaos around them. "If we don't hold the line, this whole place falls apart." Around them, the droids moved relentlessly, their glowing optics scanning the crowd for signs of resistance. The fair had become a battlefield, and the humans knew they were now the primary targets. On stage, a subordinate rushed to Kryn's side, his expression panicked. "Sir," he said quickly, "we've managed to re-establish some of the security cameras in the lower sectors. The humans—" He hesitated, swallowing hard. "They're the ones who disabled them. They've been inside our systems." Kryn's bioluminescent patches flared brightly with rage. "Find them," he growled. "I want them eliminated immediately." The station's alarms blared, echoing through the narrow corridors as Northcote led Hartley and Boucher deeper into the maintenance pathways. Behind them, the reprogrammed droid followed silently, its optics scanning for threats. "They're funneling us," Hartley muttered, her eyes flicking to her wrist interface. "They've rerouted security protocols to block most of the exits. We'll need to go through the lower sectors to reach the secondary control hub." Boucher's voice was low but urgent. "That puts us closer to their main patrol routes. They're tightening the noose." Northcote slowed his pace, his sharp gaze moving between the paths ahead. "Amelia, Kavan, keep moving. Get to that hub and shut down as much of their system as you can. I'm heading back to regroup with Brady and Tygo." Hartley hesitated. "You'll be outnumbered if they find you." Northcote's expression was grim but determined. "That's not new. You two focus on the mission. If you can give us control of their equipment, we'll stand a chance." Boucher nodded, already scanning his device for the quickest route. "We'll handle it. Just don't get yourself killed." Northcote gave a curt nod and turned back the way they had come, his boots moving silently over the metal floor. Hartley and Boucher exchanged a brief glance before pressing forward, their pace quickening as the sound of distant footsteps grew louder behind them. In the exhibition hall, Brady and Rapace moved cautiously through the chaos. Delegates were scattered, some cowering behind overturned tables while others darted toward blocked exits, only to be met with the unyielding forms of security droids. The mechanical sentinels moved methodically, their glowing optics sweeping the room as they herded survivors toward the central concourse. Rapace's eyes darted to a nearby display case, where a prototype plasma weapon was mounted behind a thin layer of transparent shielding. "Brady," he said, his voice low. "If we're going to make a stand, we'll need more than fists." Brady followed his gaze, his expression hardening. "We don't have time for subtlety. Do it." With a swift motion, Rapace grabbed a chair and swung it into the display, shattering the protective casing. He reached in and pulled out the weapon, its sleek design humming faintly as it powered up. Nearby delegates watched, some with hope, others with uncertainty. "Stay close," Brady called to the nearby delegates, his tone firm. "We'll need every able hand to hold them off." As more droids entered the hall, Rapace began distributing weapons from the broken displays. Plasma rifles, kinetic gauntlets, and micro-grenade launchers, tools meant for demonstration now became instruments of survival. "Form a perimeter," he barked. "If you want to live, follow our lead. Cover the entrances and don't let them box you in." A crystalline alien, its hues flickering with anxiety, stepped forward and took one of the weapons Rapace offered. "What's the plan?" it asked, its voice trembling. Brady's gaze was steely. "The plan is to fight. Hold the line here until we can shut them down." Deeper in the station, Hartley and Boucher reached the secondary control hub. The entrance was guarded by 2 security droids, their sleek forms illuminated by the red glow of the emergency lights. Hartley crouched behind a nearby conduit, her wrist device already interfacing with the reprogrammed droid. "I can spoof their ID tags," she whispered, her fingers moving rapidly. "But it'll only buy us a few seconds before they reset." "Make it count," Boucher replied, his voice steady. Hartley executed the command, and the reprogrammed droid stepped forward, its optics flashing in acknowledgement. The guards froze for a moment, their systems hesitating as they processed the false data. Boucher took the opportunity to dart forward, his movements quick and swift. He jammed a compact EMP device into the nearest droid's torso, triggering a short burst of energy that sent it collapsing to the floor. The second droid turned, but before it could react, Hartley's droid struck, disabling it with a powerful blow. "Clear," Boucher said, exhaling sharply. Hartley didn't waste a moment. She sprinted to the control terminal and began working, her interface connecting to the station's security grid. "Their systems are heavily segmented," she muttered. "It's going to take time to get full access." "Just get us something," Boucher said, positioning himself near the entrance to keep watch. Hartley's screen filled with streams of alien code, while she bypassed firewalls and rerouted permissions. "I can unlock the equipment storage bays," she said. "That'll give Brady and the others access to more weapons." "Do it," Boucher replied, his gaze fixed on the corridor. "And see if you can take out their cameras while you're at it." Hartley tapped a final command, and a faint hum echoed through the station as storage bays across the exhibition floor unlocked. Display cases slid open, revealing rows of advanced weaponry that had been hidden from view. At the same time, the feed from several security cameras flickered and went dark. "That should give them a fighting chance," Hartley said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Back in the exhibition hall, the change was immediate. Delegates scrambled to the newly unlocked storage bays, arming themselves with high-powered energy rifles and adaptive shields. Brady and Rapace moved quickly, directing the flow of weapons to form a more organized defense. Northcote jogged into the hall, his breath steady despite the chaos. He'd narrowly avoided 2 patrols in the maintenance corridors, using the shadows and narrow pathways to stay ahead of the droids hunting him. The sound of weapons fire drew him forward, and as he reached the edge of the room, his sharp gaze scanned the unfolding battle. Without hesitation, he moved toward Brady and Rapace, his commanding presence a steadying force amidst the panic. A reptilian delegate growled as it leveled a plasma rifle at an approaching droid, its blast punching a hole through the machine's chest. Nearby, a group of smaller amphibious aliens used compact energy shields to form a defensive line, their coordination inspired by Brady's leadership. Northcote stepped into their formation, his voice sharp and clear. "Push them toward the western exit," Northcote barked, pointing toward a choke point where the delegates could focus their fire. "Don't let them regroup." Rapace fired a burst from his own weapon, the plasma bolt striking a droid in its joint, sending it crashing to the floor. "They're adapting," he said, his tone grim. "They're prioritizing armed targets." "Let them," Brady replied, his voice cold. "We'll give them more than they can handle." The humans led the way, working together and leveraging their knowledge of tactical formations to maximize the delegates' strengths. Brady directed the crystalline aliens to form a long-range firing squad, while Northcote took command of the defensive line, positioning the heavier reptilian species to provide cover for those reloading. The once chaotic hall began to resemble a battlefield, the tide of the fight shifting as the delegates stood their ground. A tense silence broke as a reptilian delegate, defying the droid's commands, raised its plasma rifle and fired, the bolt searing through the air and striking a machine square in the chest. The droid jerked backward before collapsing in a shower of sparks. The response was immediate. The remaining droids swiveled their heads toward the source of the attack, their optics glowing brighter as they opened fire. The hall erupted into chaos as delegates, emboldened by the access to weapons, began to fight back. Northcote's voice cut through the din, sharp and commanding. "Hold the line! Focus fire on one at a time!" Plasma bolts lit up the room as alien delegates joined the humans in a desperate stand, their survival instincts overcoming their fear. Northcote moved along the defensive line, directing the heavier species to shield the smaller ones while Rapace provided covering fire. The exhibition floor, once pristine, became a battlefield, the sharp crackle of energy weapons and the clang of metal echoing through the hall. Northcote's voice rang out above the cacophony, sharp and steady. "Hold your positions! Watch your flanks!" he barked, gesturing for the heavier reptilian aliens to reinforce the defensive line forming near the western exit. Brady stood further back, rallying the remaining delegates who had taken cover. "If you're not armed, focus on the wounded and keep the corridors clear," he commanded, his tone calm but firm. Nearby, a crystalline alien screamed as a droid's energy blast ripped through its shield, shattering its shimmering form into jagged fragments. A reptilian delegate retaliated, its plasma rifle discharging a bolt that punched clean through the droid's torso, sending it collapsing in a smoking heap. The droids were relentless, their methodical movements outmatching the desperate efforts of the resistance. Rapace, his face glistening with sweat, took down 2 advancing droids with rapid bursts from his rifle before ducking behind an overturned table. "They're not slowing down!" he shouted. "They don't need to," Northcote growled, leveling his rifle and firing a precise shot into the optic array of a droid that had pushed too close. "They'll grind us down unless we finish this." At the secondary control hub, Hartley worked feverishly to bypass the final layer of security blocking the station's secondary systems. Her wrist device flashed a warning, and she cursed under her breath. "Problems?" Boucher asked from the entrance, where he was leaning around the corner, watching for incoming patrols. "They've locked out the grid's primary override," Hartley muttered. "But I can force a bypass using a feedback loop from their own systems." "Translation?" Boucher asked, his voice tight. "It'll fry half their redundant subsystems," she said, "and probably trigger alarms across the station." "Do it," Boucher replied without hesitation. "We don't have the luxury of subtlety anymore." Hartley tapped a final sequence into her device. The lights in the room dimmed, and the hum of the machinery rose to an almost deafening pitch before dropping into silence. She exhaled sharply, glancing at the screen as a new set of options appeared. "Secondary systems are down," she said, her voice filled with relief. "We've got partial control now." "Then send the message to our fleet," Boucher urged. Hartley nodded. A new channel opened, broadcasting a secure signal to a nearby UED fleet stationed just beyond the system's outer edge. "Emergency priority," Hartley said into the comm. "This is the Earth delegation aboard the Orvalis station. We've initiated resistance, but we need immediate reinforcements. Hostile forces are targeting civilians. Respond ASAP." For a tense moment, there was nothing but static. Then, a calm but steady voice came through the speaker. "Message received. Reinforcements en route. Hold your ground." Boucher allowed himself a faint smile. "They're coming." Hartley glanced at him. "Let's hope we last long enough for it to matter." In the exhibition hall, the tide of the battle had shifted yet again. With droids pushing deeper into the defensive lines, the delegates' morale was faltering. A tall insectoid delegate collapsed, its shield overloading as a barrage of droid fire tore through its carapace. "We're losing ground," Rapace shouted, his back pressed against a broken display. "We can't hold much longer." "Just a little longer," Northcote replied, firing off another volley that clipped a droid's shoulder. He stepped forward, rallying the line as the remaining defenders dug in. "Focus your fire on the center units! Break their momentum!" Suddenly, a low hum resonated through the hall, followed by a series of sharp, metallic clicks. The droids froze mid-step, their glowing optics dimming as their systems powered down one by one. The defenders stared in disbelief as the once relentless machines stood motionless, smoke rising faintly from their joints. Northcote lowered his rifle slightly, his sharp gaze darting across the room. What just happened? Brady stepped forward, his eyes scanning the now quiet battlefield. "I think we just won," he said cautiously. Cheers erupted from the remaining delegates as the realization set in. Weapons were lowered, and some aliens even embraced one another. Rapace grinned, leaning against a shattered pillar. "Guess the nerds pulled it off," he said with a chuckle. Around the hall, delegations scrambled to their comm devices, their screens lighting up as communication channels were restored. Messages were sent in a flurry, calling for reinforcements and reporting the situation to their respective homeworlds. On the command center of Orvalis, Vielos Kryn stood rigid, his bioluminescent patches flaring erratically, as his subordinates frantically worked to regain control of the station's systems. The screens before them displayed nothing but static, their access to the mainframe completely severed. "Status!" Kryn barked, his tone sharp and venomous. A subordinate turned to him, panic etched across their features. "The secondary grid is offline. They've locked us out of the main systems. Communications, security, everything. We've lost it all." Kryn's mandibles clicked in agitation as he paced the room. "How? How did this happen?" Another subordinate hesitated before speaking. "It was the humans. They've been inside our systems from the start." Kryn froze, his glowing eyes narrowing with fury. For a moment, the room was silent save for the faint hum of emergency lights. Then, his voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Prepare my personal shuttle. We're leaving." The quiet vibration of Vilos Kryn's personal shuttle filled the private hangar bay as the engines powered up. The air shimmered with heat from the thrusters, casting distorted shadows against the sleek metallic walls. Kryn stood at the base of the boarding ramp, his glowing eyes darting across the control panels as subordinates loaded sensitive cargo. Around him, the last remnants of his inner circle whispered anxiously, their usual air of superiority replaced by desperation. "Hurry up," Kryn snapped, his mandibles clicking as he paced. "The longer we stay, the more vulnerable we are. I want this shuttle off the station now." One of his advisors, a lanky alien with spindly limbs and a nervous twitch, hesitated before responding. "Sir, we've lost all communication with the outer docks. There are reports of—" "Enough!" Kryn interrupted, his bioluminescent patches flaring brightly. "I don't care about reports. Get this ship in the air or I'll leave without you." Unbeknownst to them, Northcote, Rapace, and a small group of armed delegates had slipped into the hangar through a maintenance passage, guided by Hartley's hacked access to the station's internal schematics. Northcote crouched behind a stack of cargo crates, his rifle slung across his back as he surveyed the scene. The tension in his shoulders betrayed his focus. "They're running," Rapace muttered, his voice low but edged with disdain. "Typical. They're not getting far," Northcote replied, his tone measured. He tapped his comm, whispering into it. "Hartley, we've got visual. Can you lock them down?" Hartley's voice came through, calm and focused. "I can access the hangar's security protocols. Give me a few seconds." Seconds stretched like hours as the humans waited, their eyes fixed on Kryn and his entourage. The shuttle's engines roared louder, the thrusters glowing brighter as the boarding ramp began to retract. "Amelia, now would be good," Northcote said through gritted teeth. "Done," Hartley replied. A sharp hiss filled the hangar as the shuttle's systems abruptly shut down. The engines sputtered and dimmed, the thrusters cooling as the boarding ramp froze mid-retraction. Red emergency lights flared along the walls, and thick security barriers slid into place, sealing the hangar. Kryn whirled around, his mandibles twitching with rage. "What is this?" he bellowed. His subordinates froze, their panic palpable as they glanced toward the sealed exits. Northcote stepped out from the shadows, his rifle leveled at Kryn's chest. Behind him, Rapace and the armed delegates moved in, spreading out to cover every possible escape route. "It's over, Kryn," Northcote said, his voice cold and unyielding. "You're not going anywhere." Kryn's glowing eyes narrowed as he straightened his posture, attempting to regain his composure. "You think you've won? Pathetic. Your species crawled out of the dirt barely a century ago, and now you presume to challenge us? This station, this fair, everything here, it's beyond your primitive comprehension. You've done nothing but delay the inevitable, like insects swatting at giants." Rapace smirked, his rifle trained on one of Kryn's advisors. "You're out of your league, Bug. Drop the act." Kryn's response was cut off as a low chime echoed through the hangar. The station's automated security system activated, and holographic displays flickered to life along the walls. The damning footage from his private meetings, where he and his executives had openly discussed their plans for manipulation, espionage, and exploitation, continued to loop across every display. But it didn't stop there. The humans had tied the station's comm relays into the broadcast, sending the incriminating footage not just throughout the station, but across the galaxy. Delegates' homeworlds, allied planets, and anyone tuned into the frequency now bore witness to Kryn's schemes. Kryn's mandibles twitched, his posture rigid with barely contained fury. "This farce changes nothing," he spat. "I still hold power here, and power doesn't vanish with words." Northcote held his gaze unshaken. "You lost that power the moment the truth went interstellar." Outside the station, the void of space lit up with flashes of energy as reinforcements from the UED fleet emerged from warp. Their sleek hulls, marked with the insignia of Earth, moved fiercely, flanked by the vessels of allied delegations answering the call for unity. Among them, vessels from various delegations began to appear, answering the calls for help that had gone out moments earlier. In the exhibition hall, Brady watched as the first human ships docked, their crews spilling out to secure the area and evacuate civilians. Delegates who had fought desperately now stood in small clusters, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. A crystalline alien approached Brady, its voice trembling. "Your people, they came for us." Brady nodded, his face solemn. "That's what we do." Rapus's voice crackled through his comm. "Brady, we've got Kryn. He's not going anywhere." Brady exhaled, a rare smile breaking through his usually stoic expression. "Good work. Make sure he doesn't try anything." The hall grew quieter as more ships arrived, their crews quickly taking over the cleanup and securing the station. Delegates scrambled to their comms, their voices trembling with urgency as they relayed the truth to their homeworlds. In the sealed hangar, Kryn's attempts to bluster and negotiate had devolved into incoherent rage. His subordinates cowered behind him, their eyes darting nervously between the humans and the incriminating holograms still playing on the walls. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Kryn spat, his voice dripping with venom. "This will destabilize entire sectors. The balance of power." "Save it," Northcote cut him off, his tone icy. "You lost. Own it." Behind them, Hartley worked quickly, her device synced to the droid. "They're trying to override the system," she said, her voice sharp. "I'm feeding their attempts into a loop. It'll trap them in their own commands." The station's security system issued a monotone announcement. "Unauthorized attempt to override protocols detected. Recording initiated." Kryn's mandibles twitched as his own voice played back over the speakers. "Shut it down! Override the system! Crash it if you have to! I don't care how many die, just get us out of here!" The weight of his words hung in the air. On the command center monitors, the delegates watched the full extent of his desperation and ruthlessness. Kryn had just sealed his fate. Outside the station, the scene was one of organized teamwork. The UED fleet, working alongside allied ships, began securing the Orvalis vessels and taking control of the station's systems. Northcote, Brady, Rapasi, Hartley, and Boucher had done more than expose Orvalis. They had ignited a fire of unity among species once thought incapable of cooperation. Within the station, Kryn and his executives were marched out of the hangar under heavy guard, their heads low as the assembled delegates watched in silence. As the last of the UED ships docked, Brady stood at the edge of the exhibition hall, watching as the once mighty corporation crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance. Above, the station's shattered holograms flickered one last time before shutting off entirely, the Orvalis logo disappearing into darkness. Hey there again. I'm glad you've come so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to hit the like button and the subscribe button. This is really important to the channel. Really important. And I have one more thing for you. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.